Um, he almost went to sleep. That was the first observation he shared with me after a short meditation exercise we went through. Uh, he had, he was just so relaxed. There was this like, that sense of just silence, peacefulness, a quiet focus, and like a stepping away from the noise. He had stepped away from needing to be someone or to do something into like a pose of quiet acceptance, breathing in, breathing out, centering the thoughts and feelings away from the past and the future to being present right in the now, right here, right now. Uh, do you know how to relax? I think it's an interesting question. It's an important question because I think we all need to learn how to relax. It's not just a given. You know, for many of us, the word relax might be connected with having a day off, kicking back, having a sleep and reading a book, watching a movie. But then you're greeted by noisy neighbours. And I'm not talking about the ones that decide to mow the lawn at 8 o'clock in the morning when you're wanting to have a sleep in. But these are neighbours that come knocking at your door and speaking into your mind some messages like, you're not doing enough. You don't deserve this. What will such and such think? If you don't do this, then this will happen. And I must do more. Or I must be more. To quell those neighbours, those noisy neighbours, I believe we need to both feel safe and known. The first struggle I've observed in people who find it hard to get into a deep sense of relaxation is the need for safety. Will I be okay if I relax? When will someone pounce? Who is going to tell me off? Maybe even the thought of, will I get beaten? Shouts fear into the awareness. Now, it could be the current reality of their lives. They might be living in a circle of abuse. But often it's the still, reverberating echoes of another time. Perhaps in those early formative years when there was a need for hypervigilance, to be always on the alert for some sort of threat. Perhaps, a supposed safe place for most, the family, was a place of trauma, unpredictability. So a pattern was formed of always being on guard. It could be from a recent time also, an abusive relationship, and that cortisol trigger is finely tuned for release. I remember when I was a pastor, people feeling so safe in my office that they would want to go to sleep and just nod off. The second thing I think is that we need to feel known. And one of the little mottos we often adopt in life, one of those internal mottos, is that if it's going to be, then it's up to me. On the healthy side of that is called self-responsibility. But the unhealthy flip side is a rugged self-reliance independence. Relaxing, letting go of the need to be or do can feel like an abandonment of responsibility. If I relax, who's going to ... If I relax, then things won't get done. We push back at the thought of quietness because we want to be in control. But when that fear of what will happen is known, understood, and embraced by someone greater than ourselves, it always includes an invitation to relax. Jesus said in Matthew 6, "Therefore I tell you, do not worry about your life, what you will eat or what you will drink, or about your body, what you will wear. Is not life more than food, and the body more than clothing? Look at the birds of the air, they neither sow nor reap, nor gather into barns, and yet your heavenly Father feeds them. Are you not of more value than they? And any of you, by worrying and adding a single hour to your span of life?" Does the worry add? Adds a lot of issues. In that pre-invited moment of relaxation, there is an assurance that it's going to be okay. You pick up the responsibilities later, after being restored and rejuvenated. But for that moment of relaxation, it's time for you. The word retreat is an interesting one. I remember watching old movies as a kid and hearing the cry go up, "Retreat, retreat!" And the cowboys or the soldiers would run away from the battle. Retreat seems to be a failure, a giving up, a defeat. And if we look at the meaning of the word, it means of an army to withdraw from enemy forces as a result of their superior power or defeat, or after a defeat. Then we get these places called retreat centres, and we hear people going on spiritual retreats. Aren't they kind of weaklings, running away from life? The problem is that the body keeps score. Constant running into the noise of life takes its toll on the body, and eventually the body will say enough. Stomach ulcers, high blood pressure, constant fatigue. All these things because we have not learned how to retreat and restore and regenerate. Retreating is not a failure or a sign of weakness. It's actually a sign of health and an awareness that you're not Superman. You've got feet made of clay and they need a foot bath and some pampering. Look, I give you permission to retreat. Now, we all have lives where there is a resistance. All of us pushing into a wind and it pushes back. And there is an interface between that resistance and the soul. To retreat is not a failure. It's an honest awareness that we are not machines. We need time to refresh the skin that has faced the wind. We duck in behind a tree and let the world go by. We refresh to dance another day. Jesus was and is the man who knows how to relax. He also has an invitational stance where relaxation is offered in bodily form for us. Here's some scriptures for us to chew on. With the crowd dispersed, he climbed the mountain so he could be by himself. Yay! And pray. He stayed there alone late into the night. Jesus didn't minister the whole time. He wanted some time for himself. And that was in Matthew 14. In Mark 6, he says, Jesus said, "Come off by yourself. Let's take a break and get a little rest." For there was constant coming and going, noisy neighbours. They didn't have time to eat. So they got in the boat and went off to a remote place by themselves. Yay. You got to have a break. And then Mark 4, he says, this is the story. A huge storm came up. Waves were pouring into the boat and threatening to sink it. And Jesus, well, he was in the stern with a head on the pillow, having a snooze. Even in the midst of all that, he was able to relax and have a sleep. And then I love this story from John 13. One of the disciples, the one Jesus loved dearly, was reclining against him, his head on his shoulder or on his chest. And I like that. Wow, it was a safe place. And John was just able to be known and to feel known. And then the other story is from Luke 10. Jesus entered a village. A woman by the name Martha welcomed him and made him feel quite at home. She had a sister, Mary, who sat before the master, hanging on every word he said. So here she is at his feet, just sitting there. Can you imagine that? Just sitting at Jesus' feet. Jesus knew full well about the noisy neighbours. He also knew about the need to feel safe and known. And his invite to you is to retreat to a place where you feel safe. It could be a beach, a mountain, a forest, a river, a special chair you have, a pillow to rest your head on. There's also an invite to rest your head on his chest and sit at his feet. He wants you to know that he knows. He knows about the demands of your life. He knows the noisy neighbours, and he offers refreshment for the journey. That it's going to be okay. That in this moment of relaxation, he can provide wisdom. You might like to read more about this, and if you come over to the website and find this page, there are some more links about how to centre in and find some rest. But I give you permission to relax. And here's some quotes to consider. We go to sleep and God begins his work. As we sleep, he develops his covenant. We wake and are called out to participate in God's creative action. From Eugene Peterson. So there's a sense that we might just be getting in the way if we keep on doing what we're doing. We need to relax and let God be God. Sleep is God's contrivance for giving us the help he cannot get into us when we are awake. George MacDonald. Richard Rohr, we cannot attain the presence of God. We're already totally in the presence of God. What's absent is awareness. And here's one by Augustine. Thou hast made us for thyself, O Lord, and our heart is restless until it finds rest in thee. Rick Hansen says that if you continually practice relaxation, this will increase the activity of genes that calm down stress reactions, making you more resilient. So it's if you practice relaxation, it actually has a cumulative effect to actually help your body to handle the stress of just running into the resistance, into the wind. Really good wisdom there. So here's some questions for you to consider. What stops you from fully relaxing? Question 2, where is a place that says for you, come and relax? And number 3, who are your noisy neighbours? And what do they keep saying to you, demanding of you, pushing you to do? Really important to identify what the noisy neighbours are doing. Hey, I hope you found this helpful and that you'll be able to relax a lot easier, a lot more. And if you'd like to learn more, just come over to the website, turningthepage.info, and read more there. And perhaps you might like to support what I'm doing here, and there's ways and means you can do that. You go to turningthepage.info/support, and I've got a Patreon account, and I love my Patreons. They're fantastic and they help keep this going. And really this podcast is brought to you by my Patreon supporters, and they're wonderful people. Hey, hope you found this helpful. Perhaps you might like to share it with some friends. Come over to the website and click the share button. But we'll catch up with you next week. And good on you, and thanks for watching and thanks for listening. Bye.